The Man in the Red Coat, a Christmas Detective Mystery. Chapter 1. The Christmas Invitation Hawthorne Manor sat on a low hill above the village, its windows glowing like small squares of gold against the snow. The iron gates were shut. The drive was already filling with white. A storm had been predicted all week, and now had arrived on schedule, like an invited guest. Sir Reginald Hawthorne liked things that arrived on schedule. He liked clocks that struck on the second. He liked dinner served precisely on time. He liked promises kept, and he disliked surprises, except when he was the one arranging them. Inside, the house was warm and bright. A tall Christmas tree stood in the main hall. Its ornaments were old and heavy, and several looked as if they had been hung there for decades. Candles burned in wall sconces. The air smelled of pine, wax, and mulled wine. A fire crackled in the hall fireplace, steady and confident, the kind of fire that came from careful preparation rather than hope. Inspector Harold Finch arrived a little before 6. He was retired, at least on paper. He had once been a man of great energy, but now he moved at a measured pace. His face was calm, his gaze attentive. The staff took his coat, and he stood for a moment under the tree, reading the room as if it were a statement written in invisible ink. Sir Reginald greeted him with a firm handshake. "Finch, you made it." "It would be rude to refuse a Christmas invitation," Finch said. "Especially from you," Sir Reginald replied, smiling without warmth. Finch had met Sir Reginald years ago during a financial scandal that had never become a scandal because the right people had chosen silence. Finch had always wondered what that silence had cost. Tonight, he suspected he was about to find out. Lady Margaret Hawthorne entered the hall with graceful steps. She was elegant in a dark green dress that matched the tree's deepest ornaments. She smiled at Finch with practiced ease. "Inspector Finch." "How lovely." "Lady Margaret." Her eyes were calm, but her fingers tightened briefly around her necklace as she spoke, as if the chain anchored her to something she feared losing. Julian Hawthorne appeared next, Sir Reginald's nephew. Julian was young enough to believe charm could solve most problems, and handsome enough that it often did. He greeted Finch with a bright grin that faded too quickly. "You're the famous Finch," Julian said. "Only on paperwork," Finch replied. Julian laughed too loudly and glanced toward Sir Reginald, as if checking whether the joke had been acceptable. Eleanor Price arrived quietly, a distant relative who had been helped by Sir Reginald in the way wealthy men help people when they wanted leverage. She was pale and watchful, with the careful posture of someone trying not to take up space. She spoke to no one unless spoken to. Thomas Bell arrived in a rush, shaking snow from his coat. Thomas was Sir Reginald's business partner, solidly built, red-faced from the cold, and from something else Finch could not yet name. He accepted a drink before he finished greeting anyone. Clara Finch arrived last. Not related to Inspector Finch, despite the shared name. Clara was Sir Reginald's secretary, young but severe, with the calm of someone who spent her days organizing other people's chaos. She carried a small notebook even now, as if she expected the evening itself to need documenting. Finch noted who was missing. For a Christmas gathering at Hawthorne Manor, the guest list was surprisingly small. That usually meant one of two things. Either Sir Reginald wanted privacy, or Sir Reginald wanted control. Dinner was served at 7 in the long dining room. The table was set with silver that reflected the candles. A roast goose sat in the center like a ceremonial offering. The staff moved quietly, efficient and nearly invisible. Snow pressed against the windows in thick sheets, and the wind seemed to test every crack in the frame. Conversation began politely. It did not stay polite for long. "To tradition," Sir Reginald said, raising his glass. "To Christmas, lady," Margaret added softly. "To the end of the year," Thomas Bell said, and drank too much at once. Julian tried to lighten the mood with stories from London. His stories sounded rehearsed, as if he had selected them for maximum harmlessness. Eleanor smiled faintly at the right moments. Clara ate little and listened carefully. Inspector Finch listened more than he spoke. He watched Sir Reginald's eyes. They were always slightly narrowed, always measuring. He watched Lady Margaret's hands. She kept them close to her plate, fingertips together. He watched Julian's knee bouncing under the table. He watched Thomas Bell's jaw clench whenever finances were mentioned. Even in jokes like the tea, coffee was served in the main hall. The guests gathered near the fire. The tree lights blinked softly. Outside, the storm grew louder, and the manor seemed to pull inward, sealing itself away from the world. Sir Reginald stood near the mantel clock and looked at it as if it were an ally. "At 9, he said, "we will have our little tradition." Julian perked up. "The gifts?" Sir Reginald smiled. "Yes, the gifts." Lady Margaret's eyes flickered toward her husband. "Must we?" she asked quietly. "Must we?" Sir Reginald repeated, as if tasting the words. "My dear, it would be a shame to break tradition." Inspector Finch felt the shift. It was subtle, but it was there. The air tightened. The room grew more careful. People adjusted their posture. Thomas Bell reached for his glass again and stopped himself. Clara Finch glanced at the clock, then at Sir Reginald, then away. Inspector Finch had the distinct impression that Clara knew something about the tradition that the others did not. The clock ticked. The fire crackled. The storm pressed closer. And at 5 minutes to 9, Sir Reginald said, pleasantly, "No one will leave the hall until the tradition is complete." It sounded like a joke. No one laughed. Chapter 2. The man in the red coat at exactly 9. The great doors at the far end of the hall opened slowly. A gust of cold air slid into the room, bringing with it the sharp smell of snow. The guests turned as one did a man dressed as Santa Claus stepped inside. He wore the full costume. Red coat trimmed with white fur, wide black belt, black boots dusted with snow. A thick white beard covered most of his face. A heavy sack hung over one shoulder, bulging and awkwardly weighted. The sight should have been silly, even charming. In Hawthorne Manor, it looked unnatural, as if a bright red lie had wandered into a room full of dark truths. Sir Reginald clapped once, lightly. "Ah, there you are." Santa did not respond. He walked forward slowly, boots thudding against the floor. He stopped beneath the chandelier, directly in front of the Christmas tree. The sack shifted on his shoulder. Sir Reginald chuckled. "Well, aren't you going to greet us?" Santa said nothing. He turned his head slightly, as if listening to something far away. Julian laughed nervously. "He's staying in character." Thomas Bell muttered, "Who is it?" Eleanor leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Clara Finch's face was blank, but her fingers tightened around her notebook. Inspector Finch watched Santa's hands. They were gloved, but the way the fingers moved looked stiff. Not stiff like an actor pretending to be old. Stiff like something that no longer belonged to a living person. The sack slipped from Santa's shoulder and hit the floor with a dull, heavy sound. It did not sound like toys. It sounded like weight. Santa lowered himself into an armchair near the fireplace. He sat heavily, then became still. The room waited. A few seconds, then 10, then 20. Lady Margaret's smile faded. "Reginald," she said. Inspector Finch moved first. He approached the chair and placed his hand on Santa's sleeve. The sleeve was cold, and not just cold from the hall. Cold the way metal was cold. Cold the way a body was cold when it had stopped making its own warmth. Finch lifted the beard. The face beneath was pale. The eyes were half open, unfocused. The mouth hung slightly apart, as if surprise had been frozen there. "He's dead," Finch said quietly. Lady Margaret made a small sound and sat down hard on the nearest chair. Julian stood very still, as if movement might make the moment real. Thomas Bell stared at the red coat, then at Sir Reginald, then at the floor. Eleanor pressed her lips together. Clara Finch looked as if she had expected something terrible, but not quite this. Sir Reginald took a step forward. His face was pale now, and his voice was controlled. "This is absurd. It is a crime," Finch said, "and we will treat it as one." He turned to the doors. "No one leaves." Julian blinked. "We're stuck here anyway. The storm, no one leaves because the person who arranged this may still be in this room," Finch said. The staff hovered at the edge of the hall, wide-eyed. Finch spoke sharply. "Call the police. Then return here. Do not go wandering." A maid ran. A footman hesitated. Finch repeated himself, and the footman moved. The costume had to be removed to identify the man. Finch did it carefully, methodically, as if he were unwrapping a terrible present. Under the beard, the face was familiar to some of them. Julian whispered, "Arthur." Thomas Bell swore under his breath. Lady Margaret stared at the face and said, very softly, "Arthur Blake." Arthur Blake had been Sir Reginald's clerk. He had handled accounts, correspondence, certain discreet matters. He had been dismissed 6 months earlier in a storm of accusations that had never been explained publicly. After that dismissal, he had threatened, according to rumor, to bring everything to light. He had vanished from the village shortly afterward. Now he sat dead in a Santa costume in the middle of Hawthorne Manor's Christmas tradition. Inspector Finch examined the body. No visible blood, no obvious wounds. The lips had a faint bluish tint. The hands, beneath the gloves, were rigid. Dr. Samuel Reeves stepped forward, pale but composed. "May I?" the doctor asked. Finch nodded. Doctor Reeves checked the pupils, the skin, the mouth, the neck. He frowned. "No trauma. This looks like poisoning. Possibly something fast." "When did he die?" Finch asked. "At least an hour ago," Dr. Reeves said. "Possibly more." Finch looked at Sir Reginald. They did not walk into this room alive. Sir Reginald's jaw tightened. Someone is playing a vile game. Finch's gaze moved to the sack. "Games usually have props," he said. "Let us see what this one contains." He untied the sack and opened it, and the room became even colder. Chapter 3, Secrets Under the Tree. The sack was stuffed not with gifts but with paper. Bundles of documents bound with string. Envelopes sealed and labeled. A ledger. Copies of letters. Bank statements. Contracts. A neat stack of typed pages with handwritten notes in the margins. Inspector Finch lifted the top bundle and scanned the first page. His expression did not change, but something in the set of his mouth tightened. "This," he said, "is evidence." Thomas Bell took a half-step forward, then stopped. Julian's eyes widened. Lady Margaret looked away. Eleanor swallowed. Clara Finch spoke for the first time in several minutes. "Those are business papers." "They are more than that," Finch said. He held up a letter. It was addressed to a newspaper editor. It was dated 2 days ago. It began, plainly, with the words, "I have proof of Sir Reginald Hawthorne's fraud." Finch looked at Sir Reginald. "Arthur Blake intended to expose you." Sir Reginald lifted his chin. Arthur was a disgruntled employee. He stole papers when he left. He wanted revenge. "Perhaps," Finch said, "but he is dead, and he was dead before 9. He turned to the room, which means someone killed him earlier, dressed him in this costume, and brought him here. Julian shook his head. "That's impossible. We were all together." "Were you?" Finch asked quietly. Sir Reginald spoke sharply. "Inspector, this is my house, and it is currently the scene of a murder," Finch replied. His tone remained polite, but it was firm. "We will proceed carefully." He began to question them, not with violence, not with shouting, but with the steady patience of a man who understood that people revealed themselves best when they believed they were controlling the conversation. "Lady Margaret," Finch said, "did you know Arthur Blake would come here tonight?" Lady Margaret's voice was calm. "No, I did not." "Did you know he had collected documents?" She hesitated, just a fraction. "I knew he had made threats. Reginald told me." Sir Reginald's eyes flickered toward her, quick and warning. Finch turned to Julian. "Julian, when did you last see Arthur Blake?" Julian swallowed. "Months ago. He came to the village once. He was angry. Angry enough to threaten your uncle." "Angry enough to threaten everyone," Julian said quickly. "He said he knew things. Things about money." Finch nodded slightly. "And your own situation with money, Julian?" Julian's cheeks reddened. "My finances are my own." "Your uncle pays your debts," Finch said. "That gives Arthur Blake leverage." Julian's mouth opened, then closed. He looked at Sir Reginald, then away. Finch turned to Thomas Bell. "Mr. Bell." Thomas Bell's voice was rough. "I'm not answering questions without a solicitor." Margaret Collins, the family solicitor, lifted her eyebrows. "I am here," she said. "Convenient," Finch remarked. "Mr. Bell, your signature appears on several contracts in this sack." Thomas Bell's face darkened. "Those contracts are legal." "Then you have nothing to fear," Finch said gently. Unless they are not. Thomas Bell's hand tightened around his glass until Finch thought it might crack. Eleanor Price was next. Miss Price, Finch said, what is your connection to Sir Reginald's finances? Eleanor's voice was small. Sir Reginald supports me. My father left debts. And if Sir Reginald's reputation collapses? Finch asked. Eleanor's eyes flicked to the documents. Then I lose everything, she whispered. Clara Finch stood very still. Finch studied her. Miss Finch, he said, you're the secretary. You handle correspondence. Clara's voice was measured. Yes. Did you type the letter to the newspaper editor? Clara blinked once. No. Did you type any letters for Arthur Blake? Clara hesitated. Arthur was no longer employed. That is not an answer, Finch said. Did you type letters for him? Clara's eyes lowered. I typed what Sir Reginald told me to type. Finch let that sit in the air like smoke. Doctor. Reeves shifted. Finch turned to him. Doctor, you examined the body. You believe poison. Do you recognize any signs? Dr. Reeves shook his head. Not without further tests. But something fast. Something that would leave no wound. Finch looked down at Arthur Blake's hands again. He had small details in mind now. The kind of details that decided whether a story was true. Sir Reginald spoke suddenly, with forced cheer. Inspector, you have your theory. Someone killed Arthur Blake and brought him here. But you must admit the absurdity. How could anyone carry a body through my house without being seen? Finch looked at the doors, then at the staff passage that led behind the hall, then at the closed conservatory doors at the far end, their glass panes dark with snow beyond. A house like this has more than one way to move unseen, Finch said. He picked up the sack again and felt its weight. It was heavy, but not impossibly so. A strong man could carry it. Two people could carry it easily. The body, dressed, could be moved with help, especially if the mover had access to service corridors and the staff's habits. Finch returned to the timeline. Dinner at 7, he said. Coffee at 8. Santa at 9. He looked at Sir Reginald. What did you do between 8 and 9? Sir Reginald answered smoothly. I was here, with my guests. Finch nodded. And at any point, did anyone leave this hall? Silence. Julian spoke first. I went to the lavatory. Thomas Bell said quickly. I stepped into the smoking room. Eleanor said, I went upstairs for my shawl. Lady Margaret's voice came softly. I went to the conservatory for a moment. The air felt close. Clara said, I went to fetch a pen. Sir Reginald asked for one. Finch let the admissions pile up. It was always like this. People insisted they had been together, then slowly remembered they had not been together at all. Finch's voice remained calm. Arthur Blake died at least an hour ago, he said. So he died around 8. Perhaps earlier. He looked at Dr. Reeves. Doctor, where were you at 8? Dr. Reeves hesitated. I was in the library. I had a book I wanted to check. Finch turned his attention to one object in the room that had not yet been discussed. The Santa costume itself. It was a high-quality costume. Thick cloth, heavy fur trim, not something bought cheaply. Finch touched the seam near the collar. The stitches were neat, and a faint scent clung to the fur. Not the scent of Arthur Blake, not the scent of damp snow. Something sharper, something floral, but restrained. Lady Margaret wore perfume. Finch had noticed it when she greeted him. It was subtle, but distinctive. The same scent hovered here, faintly, on the white fur collar. Finch did not speak of it yet. He simply noted it, and then he noticed something else. The Santa boots were damp, but not with the pattern of someone who had walked through the front doors. The snow on the hem of the red coat was concentrated on one side, uneven, as if the body had brushed against something cold and wet, perhaps the conservatory door frame or the back steps that led to the garden path. The front doors had opened at 9, yes. But Santa had not come from outside. Santa had come from somewhere within the manor. Finch straightened. We will search the house, he said, quietly, carefully, and we will begin with the study. Sir Reginald's face tightened. My study is private. Finch's voice remained polite. Not tonight. Chapter 4. The study and the lie. Sir Reginald led them to the study with a stiffness that suggested he would have preferred to march to the gallows. The study was a rich room. Dark wood, leather chairs, heavy curtains. A fire burned low in the grate, more embers than flame. The smell of brandy and old paper sat in the air like history. The desk was tidy. A decanter stood on a side table, along with 2 glasses. One glass contained a faint residue, a thin film at the bottom. The other glass looked untouched. Inspector Finch leaned closer. He did not taste it, of course, but he noted the faint, sweet smell, the kind that could mask something bitter. Arthur Blake could have been offered a drink here, Finch said to Doctor. Reeves nodded slowly. Yes. Sir Reginald's voice was sharp. You are implying? I am implying nothing, Finch said. I am observing. He moved around the room. He looked at the curtains. He looked at the carpet near the door. He looked at the brass handle on the desk drawer. Then he looked at the wastebasket. There were ashes inside. Some were paper ashes, but one piece remained half-burned, curled at the edges. Finch lifted it with a poker and laid it carefully on the desk. It was part of a letter. The handwriting was bold, angry. Only a few words were readable. You can't hide. Christmas. Truth. Finch looked at Sir Reginald. You try to burn something. Sir Reginald's eyes flashed. I burn old correspondence regularly. At Christmas? Finch asked. Sir Reginald's jaw clenched. Finch saw Lady Margaret's hand touch her necklace again. The same small motion as earlier. He turned to the others. We must be precise, Finch said. Arthur Blake died around 8. He did not walk into the hall at 9. So where was he at 8? He looked at Clara Finch. Miss Finch, you said you fetched a pen. Clara's face was controlled. Yes. From where? Finch asked. From a study, Clara replied. After a pause, Finch nodded. And did you see Arthur Blake? Clara hesitated. No. Did you see Lady Margaret? Finch asked. I saw her near the conservatory, Clara said quietly. Lady Margaret's voice was calm. I told you. I stepped into the conservatory. I felt warm. Warm, Finch repeated. Yes. The conservatory is warmer than the hall. He turned toward the conservatory doors, visible down the corridor, their glass panes frosted by snow. The conservatory also has a door that leads to the garden path. Julian frowned. No one would go outside in this storm. Finch nodded. Not willingly. He returned to the Santa costume in his mind. The damp on the hem, the uneven snow, the faint perfume on the fur collar. Small details, but small details were often the only honest things in a room full of lies. Christie, Finch thought in some distant part of his mind, will have enjoyed this. Not because someone was dead, but because everyone alive was pretending the truth was negotiable. Finch sat down in the leather chair opposite Sir Reginald's desk without asking permission. Sir Reginald, he said, explain the tradition. Sir Reginald's eyes narrowed. It is harmless. We hire a man to dress as Santa. He enters at 9. He gives small gifts. It amuses my nephew. Did you hire a man this year? Finch asked. Sir Reginald hesitated. No, I arranged it privately. Privately, Finch repeated, so the staff did not know. Correct. And yet Arthur Blake was dressed as Santa, Finch said. That suggests the costume was in this house already. Sir Reginald's face reddened. It belongs to the manor. We keep it in storage. Who has access to storage? Finch asked. The staff, Sir Reginald snapped. And Clara. Clara's eyes lowered. Yes. Finch watched Sir Reginald's temper. It rose quickly when he was pressed. That suggested fear or guilt or both. But fear and guilt could belong to different crimes. A man could be guilty of fraud and still innocent of murder. Finch stood. We will return to the hall, he said. I want to examine the body again. When they returned, Arthur Blake still sat in the chair, now stripped of the Santa beard and hat. The red coat lay folded beside him. The sack of documents sat on the rug like a sleeping dog. Finch crouched beside the body. He examined Arthur's fingers. There were traces under the nails. Not dirt. Fibers. Red fibers. Yes, but also something else. A tiny speck of green thread. Almost invisible unless you looked for it. Finch plucked it gently with tweezers from his pocket. He held it up to the light. Green thread. Fine. High quality. The kind used for embroidery, not for rough repairs. Lady Margaret's dress was green. But many things in the manor were green. Finch needed more than a coincidence that he examined the wrists. The cuffs had been buttoned with ordinary buttons, not cufflinks. Yet Finch noticed a small bruise on the inner wrist, as if someone had gripped Arthur there while moving him. He looked at the boots. Damp. The pattern of dampness suggested contact with wet stone, not carpet. The back steps from the conservatory led to wet stone. The front hall steps were covered by an awning and had been swept earlier. Finch remembered seeing the clean lines when he arrived. Then Finch noticed the beard. The false beard had been removed and placed on a small side table. Finch lifted it. Inside the beard, caught in the mesh, was a single long hair. Dark. Not Arthur Blake's hair, which was light brown. Finch held the hair between gloved fingers and looked up, casually, at Lady Margaret. Her hair was dark. Very dark. And when she had leaned toward Arthur's body earlier, her hair might have brushed the beard. Or it might have brushed it when the beard was being fitted onto the dead face. Finch did not accuse. Accusations were crude. He preferred questions that forced people to build their own. Cages, Lady Margaret, he said. You said you stepped into the conservatory between 8 and 9. Yes. Did you see Arthur Blake? Finch asked. She looked surprised. No. Did you meet anyone in the conservatory? Finch asked. She hesitated. No. I was alone. Finch nodded. And did you touch the Santa costume at any point tonight? Lady Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly. Of course not. Thomas Bell suddenly spoke, harshly. This is pointless. We all know who wanted those documents destroyed. He pointed at Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald's voice snapped back. Careful, Thomas. Julian's voice wavered. Uncle, tell them this is nonsense. Sir Reginald did not answer. Inspector Finch looked at Thomas Bell. Mr. Bell, he said, you are frightened? Thomas Bell's face flushed. Of what? Of ruin, Finch said. Arthur Blake's documents involve you. Thomas Bell's hands shook slightly. He was blackmailing us, Bell said. That's what he was doing. Was he blackmailing you, Mr. Bell? Finch asked. Or was he preparing to expose you? Bell swallowed. Both. Finch turned to Julian. And you, Julian, would you have paid him? Julian's voice was thin. I would have done anything. Anything. Finch nodded slowly. People do terrible things when they believe their future is collapsing. He returned his attention to Lady Margaret. And you, Lady Margaret, he said softly, what would you do to protect your husband's future? Lady Margaret's smile was controlled. You are being melodramatic. Finch stood. Perhaps, he said, or perhaps I am being precise. He looked at Clara Finch. Miss Finch, he said, come with me. Clara stiffened. Why? Because you're the only person here who knows where everything is stored, Finch said, including the Santa costume. Clara swallowed and nodded. They walked toward the storage room near the back stairs. Finch did not rush. He walked as if this were a normal evening, because people revealed more when you gave them space to make mistakes that in the storage room. Boxes sat stacked, labeled in neat handwriting. Decorations. Old curtains. Household items. Costumes. Finch opened the costume trunk. It was empty now, as expected, but inside the trunk he saw a small sewing kit. A needle. Thread spools. One spool was green. Clara's breath caught. That kit isn't usually there, she said without thinking. Finch looked at her. Who put it there? Clara's eyes widened. She shook her head quickly. I don't know. Yes, you do, Finch said quietly. Clara's lips trembled. I was told to fix the costume, she whispered. The collar was loose. Who told you? Finch asked. Clara hesitated, then spoke in a small voice. Lady Margaret. Finch's expression did not change. When? This afternoon, Clara said. She said it must look perfect. She said the tradition matters. Finch nodded. Did you sew the collar? Yes, Clara whispered. And did you put your sewing kit back? Clara shook her head. No, Lady Margaret took it. Later I saw it here, and I didn't understand why. Finch said gently, because someone wanted the thread here to confuse you. Clara began to tremble. I didn't kill anyone, she said quickly. No, Finch said, but you may have helped move a body. Clara's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to, she whispered. She said Sir Reginald would be ruined. She said all of us would be ruined. She said it was only moving him. She said he was already dead. Finch's voice remained calm. Did you see Arthur Blake alive tonight? Clara swallowed hard. I saw him, she whispered. In the conservatory. Around 8. Finch felt the pieces click. With Lady Margaret? Clara nodded, tears falling now. He was arguing with her. He said he would go to the police. He said he would go to the papers. He said he would ruin everything. She told him to. Calm down. She offered him mulled wine. Finch's eyes narrowed slightly. Mulled wine, he repeated. Not brandy in the study. Clara nodded. He drank it. Then he started to sweat. His hand shook. He sat down. He tried to stand again. Then he fell. And Lady Margaret? Finch asked. Clara's voice broke. She looked at him and said, I warned you. Finch let out a slow breath. Then what happened? She told me to help, Clara whispered. We dragged him through the service passage. She dressed him. She put the beard on. She told me to carry the sack. The papers were heavy. She said it had to look like he brought them. Finch closed his eyes briefly. Then he opened them. And Sir Reginald? He asked. He was in the hall, Clara said. With everyone. Finch nodded. So Sir Reginald did not kill Arthur Blake. Clara shook her head violently. No, I don't think he knew. Finch's voice was quiet. Then Lady Margaret did this to protect him. Or to protect herself. Clara whispered, Please don't tell her I said. I will tell the truth, Finch said. That is my job. He led Clara back toward the hall. The storm still battered the windows. Police would take time. Until then, Finch had to keep everyone where they were, and he had to be careful. A person who could poison a man on Christmas Eve could do more if cornered. Chapter 5. A Christmas confession. Inspector Finch returned to the hall and addressed the group. His tone was polite, as if he were announcing a change in dinner plans. I know what happened, he said. Sir Reginald stiffened. Julian looked hopeful. Thomas Bell looked terrified. Eleanor looked ready to faint. Lady Margaret's face remained calm, but her eyes sharpened. Finch continued. Arthur Blake did not die in the study. He died in the conservatory. Sir Reginald's eyes widened. That is absurd. Not all, Finch said. The conservatory has access to the garden steps. That explains the damp on the boots and the uneven snow on the hem. The Santa costume carries your wife's perfume on the collar, not because she happened to stand too close afterward, but because she handled it before it reached this room. The sewing kit in storage was moved, and green thread was used today to repair the collar at Lady Margaret's request. And Arthur Blake was seen alive around 8 in the conservatory. Lady Margaret's voice was smooth. Inspector, you're making a series of assumptions. Finch nodded. I'm making conclusions based on testimony. He looked at Clara. Clara stood very still, eyes down, hands clenched. Lady Margaret's gaze flicked toward her secretary with something sharp in it, something that was not kindness. Finch addressed the room. Arthur Blake came tonight to deliver these papers, he said, gesturing to the sack. He believed Christmas would make his message unavoidable. He believed Sir Reginald would be forced to face the truth in front of witnesses. Arthur chose a dramatic method. He brought the evidence. He planned to expose fraud. Perhaps he also planned to demand money. It does not matter now. Thomas Bell's voice burst out. He was blackmailing us. Finch looked at him. Perhaps, he said, but blackmail is not punishable by death. Thomas Bell fell silent. Finch continued. Arthur Blake was angry. He was careless. He believed his moral outrage made him invincible. He confronted Lady Margaret first, not Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald spoke sharply. Why would he confront my wife? Finch's eyes remained on Lady Margaret. Because Lady Margaret is the person who keeps Hawthorne Manor steady, he said. The household, the image, the smooth running of everything. Arthur Blake understood that. He believed Lady Margaret would persuade Sir Reginald to settle quietly. Or he believed she would panic. He was correct about the panic. Lady Margaret's voice remained calm. You are telling a story. Yes, Finch said. A story with facts. He looked at Dr. Reeves. Doctor, do you keep poisons in the house? Dr. Reeves hesitated. Medicines, yes. Including something that could stop a heart quickly? Finch asked the doctor. Reeves swallowed. There are preparations. For certain emergencies. Finch nodded. Lady Margaret has access to your medical cabinet, he said. She sometimes collects sleeping draught. Dr. Reeves admitted quietly. Lady Margaret's eyes flashed. Doctor. Dr. Reeves looked away. Finch continued. Lady Margaret offered Arthur mulled wine in the conservatory. Mulled wine is sweet. It hides bitterness. A fast-acting poison could be added without being noticed. Lady Margaret's smile was thin. And your proof? Finch held up the Santa beard. Inside this beard is a strand of dark hair, he said. Arthur Blake's hair is light brown. Your hair is dark. The beard was fitted before the body entered the hall. That hair is from the person who fitted it. Lady Margaret laughed softly. That proves nothing. I was near the body after the discovery. Finch nodded. Then let us talk about time, he said. You said you went into the conservatory because the hall felt warm. That was your explanation. But you were only absent a few minutes, according to the others. A few minutes is enough to do one thing. It is enough to open a door. It is enough to check whether a man is dead. It is not enough to poison him, watch him die, move his body, dress him, and stage this scene, which means the poisoning happened earlier, before you returned to the hall. Julian frowned. But we were together. Not entirely, Finch said. At 8, several people moved about. Julian went to the lavatory. Mr. Bell went to the smoking room. Miss Price went upstairs. Dr. Reeves went to the library. Miss Finch went to fetch a pen. You, Lady Margaret, had private time to meet Arthur Blake. Lady Margaret's eyes narrowed. And Sir Reginald? She asked. Finch turned toward Sir Reginald. Sir Reginald is guilty of other things, Finch said calmly. These documents show that clearly. But this murder was not his. Sir Reginald's face went gray. Lady Margaret's head turned sharply toward her husband, her expression changing for the first time. Reginald, she said softly, what did you do? Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. I did nothing. You arranged the Santa tradition, Finch said to Sir Reginald. You told us at 9 the tradition would occur. You controlled the moment, but you did not control the corpse. That is the difference. Sir Reginald's hands trembled slightly. Then who? He stopped. He looked at his wife. Something in his eyes shifted, a slow dawning that was almost worse than grief. Lady Margaret, Finch said gently, you did this. Lady Margaret's posture remained perfect. Because you say so? She asked. Because of the method, Finch replied. You did not want blood. You did not want violence. You wanted a clean death. Poison is clean. Poison is quiet. Poison looks like illness if the right people decide not to look too closely. Arthur Blake did not scream. He did not fight much. He simply failed. Lady Margaret's smile vanished. Her voice became cold. And if I did, Finch did not flinch. Then you will answer for it. Lady Margaret looked around the room. Her gaze passed over Julian, then Eleanor, then Thomas Bell, then Clara, then Dr. Reeves, then finally returned to Sir Reginald. Her voice softened slightly when she spoke to her husband. You are going to lose everything, she said. Do you understand? Everything. The papers, the contracts, the lies. He was going to drop them on us like a bomb. Sir Reginald whispered. We should have faced it. Lady Margaret's eyes flashed. You always say that. Face it. Confess. Be noble. And then what? Prison? Ruin? Julian destroyed? Eleanor homeless? Thomas dragging you down with him? You do not understand what truth does in this world. Truth is not noble. Truth is a weapon. Thomas Bell shifted. Uncomfortably. Julian looked sick. Eleanor put a hand over her mouth. Lady Margaret continued. Arthur Blake wanted to be remembered as a hero. He wanted to ruin us and call it justice. So I gave him a Christmas costume and let him deliver his precious truth as a corpse. If you want irony, Inspector, there it is. Sir Reginald stared at her. You murdered him, he said, as if the words were too large to fit in his mouth. I protected this family, Lady Margaret replied. He looked at her, and in his eyes Finch saw something that was not anger, not even heartbreak, but a terrible emptiness. You have destroyed it, Sir Reginald said quietly at that moment. The sound of distant engines came through the storm. Flashing light reflected briefly off the snow outside. The police had arrived at last. The house, cut off by weather, had finally been reached by the world. Inspector Finch spoke to the officer who entered, gave instructions, and watched as Lady Margaret was taken away. She did not resist. She walked with the calm of a woman who believed she had done what was necessary. Yes, she passed Sir Reginald. She paused. "Merry Christmas," she said softly, as if it were a farewell, not a greeting. Sir Reginald did not answer. When the hall was quiet again, Finch stood near the Christmas tree. The lights blinked. The ornaments shone. The sack of documents sat under the branches like a dark gift that could not be returned. Julian whispered, "What happens now?" Finch looked at him. "Now the truth happens," he said. "In court. In public. In daylight." Thomas Bell's face tightened. "And the business?" he asked. Finch's eyes were steady. "That will happen too." Eleanor spoke softly. "It was supposed to be a happy Christmas." Finch's voice was quiet. "People often confuse happiness with silence," he said. "They're not the same." Dr. Reeves approached Finch and spoke in a low voice. "I should have noticed," he said. "I should have seen the signs." Finch nodded. "People see what they can live with," he replied. Clara stood near the wall, shaking slightly. Finch looked at her. "You did the right thing," he said quietly. Clara's eyes filled again. "It doesn't feel like it," she whispered. Finch glanced at the Santa coat folded over the chair. Red cloth, white fur, a costume meant for joy, used for death. "Christmas," Finch said softly, mostly to himself, "reveals what we hide. Sometimes it does it gently. Sometimes it does it like this." He put on his coat. The storm still raged, but the world was moving again. As Finch stepped toward the door, he heard the mantel clock strike once, slow and clear, as if the manor itself were marking the end of something. The man in the red coat had arrived on schedule. The truth had followed, as it always did, the end.